Welcome to the Edge of Greatness podcast. The path to greatness is never linear and requires patience and consistency. Join us on our journey as we peel back the layers of success, searching for that elusive core. Each week we will explore a different component of greatness, utilizing experts who have traveled some part of the path that we are all on. We aim to uncover insights into the areas of leadership, coaching, performance, overcoming failure, the power of habits, and so much more. We are all on the edge of greatness. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I have with me a very special guest. It is Dennis Mellen. He is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and then served as an Air Force pilot for 20 years. After his service career, he worked with Alaska Airlines as an instructor pilot and fleet captain. And then in 2012, he suffered a heart attack, which forced him to retire from flying and repurpose himself. And now he is a leader in the community. He's coaching baseball, speaking, and then he wrote a book, Takes More Than Heart. Really excited to have you on today, Dennis. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks, Charles. It's really great to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to get in this conversation. But what I want to start with first is I was actually looking at your Twitter, and then I jumped over to your website, beabean.net, and I thought it would be a good place to start the conversation if you could explain to my audience what it means to be a bean.
Well, you know, life is kind of like a boiling pot of water. Sports are like a boiling pot of water, and you can throw a coffee bean in there, and it magically transforms the water into something that smells good, tastes good, and changes its environment. So I look at leadership as your development into a bean, so that you influence the people around you, influence your team, and take them from ordinary water into gourmet coffee. At least in concept.
I gotcha. Gotcha. So it's basically taking the adversity of life and turning it into a positive, right?
Right. And,
Okay.
You can't do anything about the boiling water, but you can affect the water. So, your leadership, whether you're a designated leader or a situational leader or just a follower, you can still influence everybody around you. So that's the concept.
I got it. It sounds like you have quite the positive outlook on facing the boiling water. And I'm wondering, does that stem from the adversity you faced when dealing with the heart attack and all that?
Well, yeah, I have to admit that to get started writing this book, I didn't want it to be, oh, look at poor me, look at how this has affected me and all this. But the fact of it was I had a job that I loved going to work for. And that's what a lot of people continue in a job too long when they know that it's not something that they really want to do. And for me, it's kind of an inverted life. Kids at 18 are looking at, oh, what school do I go to? Should I go into the workforce? What should I study? All those. I had a signalness of purpose since about 10 years old. When I was at my father's Air Force base, looking up at the airplanes flying overhead and going, hey, that's pretty cool. That's what I want to do when I grow up. And of course, my wife says I've never reached that point, but that's not in this story. That's a different story. But at age 56, about 12 years ago, I had this heart attack when I was out mountain bike riding, and I was absolutely, positively devastated, because it's like, now what do I do? Not only, at 56 to launch a brand new career. So I kind of dabbled in a few things before I finally struck this as part of my journey of being able to pass on some of the lessons and maybe help us people find a shortcut.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things. I find it interesting too, because like you said, some people stick into their careers or their jobs miserable for too long, and you were the opposite of that. You absolutely loved what you did, and then it was taken from you. Why do you think we have such a desire to jump into things that we don't like to do and then hang on to it? What is that all about? What do you think that's stemming from?
I think people are generally adverse to change, And when it comes down to improving yourself, when it comes down to uh, seeking success, there's challenges that come along the journey, as just like on a bike ride. There's challenges. There's the hills that you can coast downhill, and that's fun, and weave in between the trees if you're mountain bike riding, like you're slalom skiing. But there's still those long climbs and those times where you just don't have it in you to make it all the way to the top and end up walking, or in my case, having a heart attack about 2/3 of the way up the hill. But yeah, it's what you do with those challenges, finding the opportunity out of it.
Yeah. So I'm curious because you said most people are adverse to change. They don't want to face new obstacles. They get stuck in their ways and they like what they're comfortable with. How was it for you when you were all of a sudden forced to change? Because that's something that you didn't have control of. That wasn't your choice to change. It was just thrust upon you. How did you handle that initially? What was that like?
Well, it's amazing because it happened so suddenly. I mean, just the day before, I was up flying from Seattle down to San Diego at cruise altitude, looking down at Eugene, Oregon, basically going, hey, look at those guys down there. I wonder what they're thinking about. And of course, they're sitting down there on the ground going, hey, look at those guys up there. I wonder what they're thinking about. And I was thinking, wow, the sheer joy of 30 plus years of professional flying. And yeah, it still worked, but I'm actually making it look easy today. And when it's really not easy, but it's gotten into a routine. And then boom, it's gone. So, the option was, do I go enter Geezerville, where you sit back in your Barker Lounger and with a cool drink, wondering whether you're going to watch NYPD Blues reruns or Oprah for the day, or do you get off the couch and start hustling again and try and find your new why? Simon Sinek talks about finding your purpose and your why, or inspiring people to find their why. Tell you why do you work at this place? What's your purpose here? Instead of just, okay, I get in at 8 o'clock, have a cup of coffee, I do push this pile of paperwork over here. Why are you doing that? Mm-hmm. So that's a struggle that people sometimes give up on.
I agree. I think we end up getting stuck dealing with the adversity by facing and staying in the adversity instead of looking for the next door. What's opening now? So you mentioned you dabbled in a few things before you found your way to what you're doing now. What did you kind of dabble in?
Well, it was one of those things of, I loved aviation. I was not going to get to fly anymore, but that's what I knew. So I worked at a couple of different airlines at different jobs, but it was not the same as working for Alaska Airlines. I can't tell you what a great place that is to work. They have the same problems everybody does, but they're always looking forward. So trying to find that new place where it challenged me and felt like an impossible standard, really, to compare it to Alaska Airlines. I went from a job in Rockford, Illinois, to one up in Appleton, to one that was based out of DC, where I traveled all over the world, talking to different airlines, doing safety audits. And then it just got to be, well, the decision was kind of made for me. The consulting job, I was supposed to go to Kenya for the third time that 1 year, and there was a terrorist attack at a mall about 3 miles from the hotel we stayed at. And the people I worked for couldn't explain what we're going to do in addition to the security requirements. If there was going to be any additional, they just kept saying, well, we've got it covered. So, well, what are we doing? Well, I can't go unless you let me know. So it was a consulting job, an at will job, if you will, and they just never called me back. So then it was back to square one. What do I do now? So I started looking around, and all of a sudden I latched onto, hey, I love baseball. What would it take to coach high school baseball? So I went through the checkout programs, and all of a sudden this was getting exciting and more exciting. Then I discovered the John Gordon leadership and the power of positive leadership, and then just public speaking in general, giving speeches and signature talks, keynotes, and addressing Rotaries. And I think I've found my niche because I can I can pass on some lessons I've learned and maybe help somebody uh, not have to go through what I did. You know, the bit about making that much difference with everybody you with everybody you come in contact with.
Yeah, no, I think it sounds interesting because it sounds like you were definitely pushed by outside forces into what you've found now. And
Right.
and the way you talk about the leadership piece with such passion, I feel like it's almost like it was a calling that was a sub calling that you didn't know you had until you were forced to find it because of outside circumstances.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole basis, a lot of the courses at the Air Force Academy are on leadership. There's ongoing leadership in the Air Force. There's ongoing leadership workshops and things at Alaska. So you know, you don't have certificates that you attended such and such conference, but all those things added up. And, you know, it goes back to that Japanese adage of fall down 7 times, get up 8, you know, just keep falling forward. And,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and I think I stumbled upon something I really do have a passion for.
Good. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so now how long have you been coaching baseball?
Well, at the high school level, this is the ninth year.
Awesome.
Previous to that, I've got 4 sons, and so probably I have never counted it up. It's over 20 years because they range. Well, they range in age now from 25 to 36. So, and they all played baseball at one point. So I coached a lot of that from 6-year-old t-ball up to 16, 18-year-old travel baseball. But I've learned more in the last 9 years than I did the other years all combined. It's really
Love
been
it.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me some of the things that you've learned over the last 9 years, because obviously working with high school kids and now finding a program that you've been in for a little bit of time, that's kind of fun too, because you get to see these kids grow up and through the program. I'm sure there's some really neat stories in that.
Well, yeah, there is. There's some really cool stories of them coming back, and I was looking at it in retrospect a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking, you know what? And I've used this. It's kind of part of my 30-year plan. And of course, the kids look at me, Coach, you're going to be 90 something. I said, no, it's not that 30 years. 30 years from now, when you come up against something adverse, you're going to have that little voice of Coach Mel in the background going, what's important next? Oh, let's work on this pitch. That's in the scorebook. You know, let's touch all the bases. All those trite sayings we talk about in baseball all the time, but they really resonate with you after your baseball career is over. And you know, baseball careers typically don't last past 20s, and even if you go to the majors, there's very few that make it to 40. So somewhere in there, you got to make a transition again. And those lessons, I think, really resonate with people, and I think they make that person a better person, no matter what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I always say that all the time as far
Yeah,
as the baseball career or your sports career in general is limited. So the lessons you learn from playing sport is what you need to make sure you take with you, because when that time comes, those transitional pieces and those lessons is what makes you successful for the longer part of your life. You know, the sports part's only going to be a small percentage. The what you do next is
yeah,
the valuable piece.
right. And that's exactly the theme of my book, Takes More Than Heart, is rather than, oh, poor me, look at what happened to me, it's trying to take that story and showing you some one person's way of dealing with the challenges that they're faced and changing them in opportunities. You know, it could be a career-ending athletic injury. You know, I'm never going to get to play baseball again. I mean, I was reading a story about Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, and they were asking him, how does he make it look so easy to run the 100-meter dash? And he said, well, I've been working on it for 4 years, conditioning, uh, going through hurts, going through sleeps, making sure I'm dieting correctly, training. And he says, nobody sees that. All they see is my 9.35 seconds. So think about training, all that training he did, and his thing lasts 9.35 seconds. or
Yeah.
whatever his record is now.
Oh yeah, no, he's something
You
special,
don't
isn't
see
he?
what goes on behind there, You see the heroic thing of him, fist bumping somebody before he gets into the block, and then he goes out and sets a world's record or whatever. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
he's an amazing guy. He's the nicest guy, at least in appearances.
Yeah, no, that's a guy that I would definitely love to meet someday, because I agree. Everything about him, he does it the right way from what it's presented anyway. And you want to believe that that's what you're really getting with someone like him, because
Oh yeah,
he's a special talent.
Even Michael Jordan was talking about it. He said, everybody talks about the last second baskets I make and everything, but he says somebody said that we realized he missed 29 last second shots where they lost the game. So you see the successes. Yeah, here's Michael Jordan, and then but you don't see somebody saying, "Oh, he just missed that shot. We could have had the game." I mean.
Yeah, no, I always use Lionel Messi. He has a good one. He talks about how it took him 17 years and 130 something days to become an overnight success. And I was like, I like that, because
yeah.
They didn't see the work, the time, the dribbling, all the different stuff. And I think that that's a huge piece of it. So what I want to do is I want to dig back into your book a little bit now. I want to kind of redirect back in there, because that story is intriguing to me, because everyone's going to face adversity. Not everyone's going to have this extreme level of adversity that you had to face, and that life-changing, altering decisions you had to do.
But I'm not the only one that's gone there. So
exactly.
I'm not gonna,
Yeah. But how do we as a whole start to come full circle with the understanding that sometimes bad things are going to happen? How do we stay positive in those negative moments? How does that happen for us? How do we change the mindsets of those around us?
Well, I think it starts with the little things. When you start complaining about, oh, this happened and that happened, and I failed at this and I failed at that. I've told my boys numerous times, I've failed way more times than I've been successful. But the success has been really good. It's what you do or how you look at that. And I think the most important thing is rather than look at it as a failure, what's the lesson? Drop the rest, or flush the rest, or whatever mental thing that you have on it. Don't carry around that baggage. Ken Ravizza talks about it. If you're still worried about that last at bat, if you're still worried about that last business failure, or came up short on a project or something like that, that's a brick in your back pocket. Well, if you start accumulating bricks, you stop moving. So, his saying is drop the bricks. Drop the bricks. I mean, there's nothing you can, it's in the scorebook as a perfect, nobody goes back and says, well, I'm going to go doctor these. I really batted 400 last year,
Yeah.
You can't, it's in the scorebook. There's nothing you can do. You can take the lesson, but you have to move forward. And that was the subtle change that had to happen to me. I'm telling you, it wasn't that I didn't go through depression. I mean, I was absolutely devastated. This is all I ever wanted to do, was be a professional pilot. Everything was oriented on. And it took somebody like a neighbor that had gone through something similar, and he just kept, he listened to my story, and he just kept saying, well, what are you going to do? And then a little while later, what are you going to do? You can sit there and whine and cry about it, but what are you going to do? Move forward, or sit right there? So I really took that to heart.
I love the drop the brick, or drop the bricks, or you can't, it's in the scorebook, because I think that's a perfect analogy of, if you let the bad things accumulate, it's slowly going to weigh you down. It's slowly going to hold you back. And as you hold more bricks, you may not stop moving. You may still be moving forward, but other people who aren't carrying them, they're going to fly right by you.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting thought.
And you have to have, one of the best things about it is just have this mental image of how you get rid of it. You've seen the baseball batters up there. They wave at a curveball that's in the dirt, and then they're looking at the left field foul pole, or they're tightening their gloves, or they're looking at the trademark on the bat. And what they're doing is resetting themselves. So having some sort of mental image of how you get rid of that, how you flush it. In fact, I might even have it here. I don't know if this will show up. It's
yeah, I see it.
I've used this in the dugout, and it actually, it doesn't work for everybody, but no. I've used that in the past. Hey, we need to flush that game,
Yeah. No, I think I need to get one of those because I've talked about that several times with my teams about how do we drop the negative play and move
Yeah,
forward, because especially with high school and younger, they hold on to it.
yeah.
It's hard to get them to understand. But I've been trying to come up with fun, different ways to get them to like move forward and move on. And I think that I've been looking for one of those for a long time. So I might have
Really,
to hit you up.
I thought maybe this might get cut out because it's
Oh
so
no,
hokey, but
no, I love it. I
yeah,
love it.
yeah,
So I might have to hit you up after this and make sure I find out where you got that from.
yeah,
What I want to go to here is you mentioned that you had a neighbor that was talking to you, and I think that's a valuable piece of this process of going forward and moving on is opening up and having people in your corner to support you. And I think a lot of times when we face adversity and we face negativity, we internalize it and we hold it in. We don't want people to know that we're struggling, because
right.
all we see in the world is those short snippets of everyone's successes all over social media and all over YouTube, and everything else is this crystal ball version of everyone's life. So who was in your corner? Who did you lean on when you had these tough moments? Because you mentioned the neighbor who was kind of there going, okay,
Yeah,
now what? Now what?
yeah.
I
Oh,
guarantee you didn't do this alone, right?
no, no. I'm gonna have to defer to my wife for the most part. She was just like like my solid bedrock there. We're gonna work through this. We're gonna get through it. It wasn't that she didn't get negative sometimes too, but we're gonna, we're gonna work through this. And I think the big thing was, we had lived outside of Seattle, and when we shifted and I started looking at jobs where I live now in the Chicago area, it also helped perk her up a little bit, because now we're going to move back to where her family is. Well, I call them the Outlaws. Some people refer them differently, but they're the Outlaws. But yeah, they so it was them, and then I had two of my best friends that were uh, in my corner. They would at least listen, and on occasion they would just have some really thought-provoking nugget that I could latch onto and move forward with. Ken Adams and Tom Kemp are just amazing guys. So I love them to death, man. You
Oh
can
yeah.
say that to your best friends too.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. For
yeah,
sure. I've got a couple of those people in my corner too. So when I
yeah,
face adversity, I feel comfortable that I can tell them anything and be like, look, I'm struggling. I need you.
yeah,
And they're there for you. And I think that's something that what I've noticed is we don't do that enough. We don't accept outside help. We don't reach out for some positive, encouraging words when we're struggling.
yeah.
And I want to get that to be a part of the change that happens, because when you're pursuing greatness, and like I'm talking about in my show a lot, as far as how to get to this excellent level, the people who make it to the highest levels never do it alone. We all have a team, right? So
Yeah.
how do we get that through to people to start to open up, to ask for help, to
Well,
not be afraid of it?
that's an interesting point. Brene Brown talks about when you really make a connection and build a relationship is when you can start being vulnerable with somebody and start letting things out. We do an exercise in that Power of Positive Leadership training, where we have everybody in a room and we go through everybody and have them do who's your hero? Tell us about a hardship you endured and give us a highlight. And you start seeing what's behind the curtain for Charles Schulz. It's not just the all-powerful Oz. It's there in the Wizard of Oz. You pull the curtain back, and here's this vulnerable professor. Well, you come to find out he's really kind of a nice guy. Same thing with Charles Schulz has this image, but we peel back the curtain a little ways, or peel back. That's a bad analogy. Pull the curtain back, and you start realizing, he's just like us. He's got vulnerabilities. He's got things that bother him, things that he's got an image of himself. And once you can start revealing that, Dabo Sweeney does it all the time. Gets the guy. He has team meetings where they put somebody in the safe chair. Nothing goes outside that room. You don't talk about it, but we get to learn what's behind the curtain for Dennis Mellen. I've held in all that's happened over the last few years for the longest time. And I think one of the great things about this book and made it all worthwhile is the cathartic feeling I got from opening up. Because once you write a book, you're forever known as the guy that landed the airplane in the middle of the Hudson River with 189 passengers, or the heart attack guy that was up on a hill one day riding a bike and his life changed. I mean, it's out there,
Yeah.
and there's no hiding it anymore. So that was really kind of cathartic for me.
Yeah, I like the idea of the safe chair, like you
Yeah,
said, and talking and letting the emotions come out and being in a safe space like that. And I actually really am curious about the power of positive leadership, where you have a hero, right? You talk about a low spot,
right.
and then you talk about a positive or a high note, right?
It's a triple H exercise, is what they call
Okay,
it. Hero hardship highlight.
okay,
And
and
it's real. We've used it. It might take half hour, 45 minutes to run through that, but look what it does. You get to find out that so and so's dad is gone, and his mom is his hero, or you get to find out that he's got a little brother that inspires him, and he's autistic, or things that you would that especially teens, raging hormones. I'm a he-man. I don't need anybody at 16, 17, 18 years old. And it applies to the ladies too, in a different way, whatever their vulnerabilities are.
mhm.
But you reveal that, and all of a sudden you're starting to get that team cohesion. You mean something to me, Charles Schultz. We've had this conversation today, and it's forever changed how we interact. I think that's where that positive leadership comes in. And think about how hard it is right now. We're not in contact in a lot of businesses.
Yeah,
It's hard to stay in contact right now.
we're definitely isolated
Yeah,
right now, and opening up and being vulnerable and having those strong connections is powerful
right.
and needed.
Right.
It's needed right now, especially because we're still trying to heal from stuff. We're still trying to come back together. We're still trying
Right.
to grow as a country, as a community, as a team or an organization, and those
Yeah.
things make a huge impact. So is that something you utilize with your team like yearly, or is it something that just periodically you go, hey, we need to have
Well,
this?
yeah, this is one of the most unique aspects of both high school and college baseball, or sports in general. Think about this. Every year you lose your senior leadership. You know, what company does that happen? Microsoft, can you imagine? Everybody, senior leadership is leaving. Okay, time for new. It takes more than a year to build those relationships. Same thing with Ford, or what's a big company where you live?
We've got Honda plant out
Honda.
here.
There you
Yeah,
go.
we got a
Yeah,
Honda plant
senior
just down the
leadership
road.
of Honda is out. That would be a tremendous upheaval in the company. Well, it happens every year in college and high school sports. You lose all your senior leadership, so there is a need there for that power of positive leadership.
Yeah,
And people don't realize that that's we measure wins and losses, we measure profits and losses, and things like that. But how do you say that this team is more together than another team, or it's a subjective thing, or that Charles is a 9 type leader, and Dennis is a 5? I mean, we don't have that, so it's kind of there's a feeling in there, but we know we need it.
I've never really thought about the idea that, especially at the high school and college level, that you lose your senior leadership every year.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've ever really put that into my thought process, because I always just thought, you build a culture, you try to create leaders, and it's always consistently you're trying to
Right.
grow leaders. But I never thought of it as in the real world, what that would be like,
Yeah.
because if every year you lost your top leaders, or your most senior people, even if they weren't leaders necessarily, you're still losing your most senior people.
Yeah.
How do you replace that on a regular basis? And that makes it interesting as far as the value of.
We just did it this year. I mean,
Yeah.
we lost a whole season of development. So, we got people that have never been in leadership positions, because most of them were all of them were at the varsity level were sophomores and juniors last year.
Mhm.
And the leaders left, and they didn't have time to copy or imitate or see what works for that leadership. So it's been a tough year to get organized. Plus the seasons are all shortened, and
Yeah.
we're wearing masks. I'm barely getting the names right now. We've only been doing baseball for like 3 weeks, so
Yeah, it's a little tough to get all the nuances
Yeah.
of baseball in
Yeah.
a couple of weeks for sure.
Yeah.
So, what's next on your journey now? What are we doing? What are we looking to do next? Now that you've created this book and this story, you're starting to become a leader from that perspective. You've helped, I'm sure, a handful of people overcome some adversity through this story. What's the next step for you?
Well, personally, I want to continue doing all of these things. I want to continue doing the training. You know, I guess selfishly, I would love to be on a TED Talk sometime and have, or be sitting across from some talk show host or something. But that's an ego type thing. What I'd really like to continue doing is just making that little difference. I think Tim Corbin down at Vanderbilt talked about him being a baseball player in college, and he's a freshman riding the bench, but he's got a mentor out in the field, and his mentor stretches a single into a double, and he's sitting on second base, and he looks right at him, and he goes, and so he just goes, gives it back to him. So a little bit later, there's a lead, and the freshman gets put in at third base. Of course, the mentor's over at first base, and like baseball, it happens all the time. Substitute, that's the first person that's going to get a ball hit to him, right? So he stabs a backhand at third base, makes a long throw to first, and gets him out. And the guy at first base goes, and he goes back. He goes to the dugout. What is this? He says, that's the difference. That's the difference between being elite and being average. And that comes from practice. Not practicing until you get it right, but practicing until you can't get it wrong. That's a Navy SEAL saying. And if you think about it, I've done it so many times. That's why who practices base running on a consistent basis? And how many times do we get caught in bad base running? Same thing in business. Yeah. That's the difference between being elite and average. The detail.
I like that. I like that. And I totally agree that the focus on the little things. I heard a quote. It was the Columbus Blue Jackets head coach. He was talking about finding joy in the monotony of excellence.
Yeah.
And it just resonated with me because the truth is that, to be great at something, you have to do the stuff that other people aren't willing to do. And you have to do it consistently.
Right.
And it can be boring, and it can be slow, and it can be something you don't necessarily want to do, but you still have to find a way to go do it. And I think that's valuable.
Who are the major league starters? Those are the ones that can do the fundamentals consistently. So we have a social media hashtag of REF for relentless execution of fundamentals. Everybody's going to have a web gym, but if the guys that play the most, the ladies that play the most, even in business, the ones that perform consistently are executing the fundamentals consistently.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting thought, because I think you're right. I think if you don't have to be great at anything if you can be consistent at everything.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting thought, because we always are trying to pursue excellence at something, or trying to be the best at something, or trying to do the special thing, the big thing.
Right.
The big thing is going to happen just because of the way the game falls into your lap, or the opportunity happens to hit. But if you do only the big thing, but you can't do the little thing, you're not going to be worth a whole lot in the long run.
Yeah, and you can have all these fantastic plays and everything, but it's the fundamentals that come into play. We try to keep it as simple as possible. Our thing is when we're playing baseball, and it'll probably apply to business too in some way, but get them on, get them over, get them in. Does that mean I have to bunt, or does that mean I have to hit a home run? Both. It depends on what you can do. But if you're getting it consistently, that's who's going to be in the game. And same with business. That's who's going to be called upon for this particular project or this particular problem. Somebody that knows the consistent way of executing those fundamentals.
You said something interesting in that response there, and it was depends on what you can do. And I think that's a valuable thing for athletes as well as business people to take into consideration when it comes to their role on a team or in a project or doing a whatever it may be, is do what you do and do it well. And how do we create that mindset for young people to
And
not
it's hard.
necessarily want to be the hero all the time, but be a part of the success.
Right.
How can we do that? How do we fix that?
Yeah. How do we get them to accept bloom where you're planted? And we'll, as you get better, we'll get you somewhere else, it's a hard concept to get because they all want to be the hero.
Mm-hmm.
But then like Usain Bolt, it takes 4 years to get to that 6-second play in the high school state playoff where you do something phenomenal or you don't you flub it. But it doesn't mean that's not the end of the world, but it's how you prepare for yourself that moment. What the lessons were that you carried forward that make a difference now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I always think it's interesting too, because again, we'll talk baseball with this because that's what we're both familiar with. But you see the little guy who's not a power hitter swinging for trying to hit home runs,
right?
When all they had to do was bunt the ball and move the base runner over, and here they are hitting a routine fly ball to left because that's the power that they've got. They hit it perfect. That's all they got, though.
Yeah.
Why are we trying to be something we're not? Why are we not comfortable being who we are and just living that life to the fullest? And I think that's a valuable piece for everyone.
Yeah, it stretches down to the bench. My friend Tammy Matheny, that
Mm-hmm.
she talks about the battle of the bench. What can I do on the bench to help the team? Hey, what'd you see on that? Oh, he pitched me backwards. Curveball. The next one was a changeup and then a fastball. And I was waving at all. I was all screwed up. Okay, so now that we know the strategy, this guy is pitching can hit his spots, and he's got a good curve and a good changeup. That's what we learned from that. Not I struck out on 3 pitches, because I went up there with no intelligence, really. Yeah. But now I have learned something. My next at bat should be better. How do we build on that? Yeah. Same with any business, charity, education, or whatever. How do we build on that learning process?
No, absolutely.
We learn so much from our failures.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you can see my hat, fail forward. That's a big part of my belief system, and is you're gonna fall down, but it's what happens after you fall down that matters, and that's part of the journey. So
how you get up.
Yeah. So what I want to do now is I want to leave you an opportunity to share ways for my listeners to connect with you. Where are you active? Where can they get a hold of you? How can they reach out and see what you're doing next?
Well, the webpage for the leadership training is beabean, all one word, .net. And then the book is takesmorethanheart.com. And the book's available. If they want to DM me, I can get the book, a signed copy to them, or you can order it Amazon, Friesen Press, all the usual vendors that are out there. Let's see. I guess social media. It's actually Be a Bean, Dennis Mellen, and it's also at Be a Bean 14 for Twitter and Instagram. So, and I'm on LinkedIn as Dennis Mellen. I thought maybe I better have one that had my name in it, right?
Yeah, there you go. And I'll make sure.
I'm sure I can. Well, we don't really have live listeners, but I'm sure that we'll get that information out where they can find all those things. Yeah.
I'll put it all in the show notes, make sure they have access to it with links and everything else. But really appreciate you taking time to join me today. Love the conversation. I think that we touched on some really unique topics that hopefully the listeners took a little bit from, because I think there's some really cool things in there.
Thank you too. I'm going to put one plug in for my friend Chip Baker at the Success Chronicles. He always ends his shows with "Go get it."
All right, there we go. All right, you guys heard him. That's it for today, guys. As always, keep reaching for the stars, fall flat on your face, but remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and join us again next time as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But no matter what happens, remember, whenever we fall, always get up.
Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review our show. We are all on the edge of greatness.